Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a real deep dive, literally, into one of the absolute most enduring mysteries of human history, the lost world of Atlantis. We're going to act as impartial explorers here, making a submarine descent straight into the ancient texts of the Greek philosopher Plato, and then plunging even deeper into the expansive 19th century theories of Ignatius Donnelly. Now, we aren't here to prove or disprove anything. We're just here to map out exactly what these incredible sources claim. So take a deep breath and let's prepare to submerge. Okay, let's look at our dive plan for today. First up, the legend. Second, sunken winders. Third, the abyssal depths. And finally, resurfacing. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The legend. A story preserved in time. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this epic tale actually survived. To understand this sunken empire, we have to trace its journey through time. According to the texts, the cataclysm that swallowed Atlantis happened way back around 9600 BC, but, the story didn't end there. Fast forward to 600 BC, and the Greek lawgiver Solon supposedly learns about this ancient empire from Egyptian priests in the city of Sais. And get this, these priests claimed the records were already 9,000 years old. This whole lineage was then passed down until 400 BC when Plato famously recorded the tale in his dialogues. And much later, in 1882, Ignatius Donnelly published his monumental theory, arguing that this wasn't just a fable at all, but verifiable human history. But what exactly was Atlantis? Our sources define it as much more than just a small, mythical island. They describe a massive island continent right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, situated opposite the Pillars of Hercules, which is what we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. And the sheer scale of the empire is just staggering. According to Plato and Donnelly, this was a huge, consolidated power that completely subjugated parts of Libya, Egypt, Europe as far as Italy, and even parts of what Donnelly identifies as the Americas. It was a true global superpower of the ancient world. Moving down to Section 2, Sunken Wonders, 3 amazing facts. All right, let's adjust our buoyancy a bit and float through the really dazzling heights of their civilization. We've distilled the source material down to 3 truly amazing facts. First, their royalty actually became our gods. Second, they literally gave us the alphabet. And third, they possessed wealth on a scale you can barely imagine. Let's break these down one by one. So, Donnelly's first breathtaking theory is that the gods and goddesses of the ancient Greeks, the Phoenicians, the Hindus, and the Scandinavians, they weren't divine beings at all. They were simply the mortal kings, queens, and heroes of Atlantis. That's right, Zeus and Thor might have basically just been ancient politicians. Donnelly argues that Mount Olympus and Asgard are really just these universal confused memories of a real place where early mankind lived in peace. Poseidon, for example, wasn't just some god of the sea. According to this, he was the actual founder and first ruler of the Atlantean Empire. The second amazing fact kind of fundamentally shifts our entire understanding of human progress. Donnelly's texts argue that Atlantis was the exact specific region where humanity first rose from a state of barbarism into civilization. They didn't just build cities either. They were supposedly the very first manufacturers of iron and bronze, effectively sparking the global Bronze Age. And on top of that, they allegedly invented the parent phonetic alphabet, which was then carried by Atlantean colonists all the way to the Mayas of Central America and the nations of Europe. And this brilliantly illustrates our third fact, their absolutely unimaginable wealth. Plato's accounts describe an island that was just dripping in riches. Palaces were literally coated in silver and gold. But the most fascinating detail is something called orichalcum. This was a highly prized, really mysterious metal dug directly out of the earth of Atlantis, and the texts say it flashed with this brilliant red light. It was considered second only to gold in pure value, and the Atlanteans allegedly used it to line the floors and the huge pillars of the magnificent temple of Poseidon. But, as we know, the higher the rise, the further the fall. As we cross over the precipice here, the tone of our texts shifts drastically. Plato tells us, and I quote, "But afterward there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of rain, the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared." Which brings us to section 3, the abyssal depths, 3 terrifying facts. Descending into the final, really foreboding hours of the empire, the texts outline a terrifying triad of destruction. Step 1, moral decay. Plato writes that the Atlanteans, who once had these true and great spirits, basically became intoxicated by their own luxury. They were overcome by unrighteous avarice and power, which provoked the wrath of the gods. Step 2, sudden annihilation. In a single, horrifying day and night, the land was completely devastated by inescapable earthquakes and floods. And step 3, the island was just swallowed whole, leaving behind nothing but a dark, impassable sea of thick mud. Now, the human cost of this cataclysm is almost beyond comprehension. 64 million. According to a translation of the ancient Mayan Troano manuscript that's referenced in the sources, this staggering number represents the millions of inhabitants who allegedly perished when the land of Mu, which the text directly links to this exact same geological catastrophe, was torn apart and sacrificed to the ocean depths in a single night. And the aftermath was just incredibly eerie. Plato noted that the ocean in those parts became this impassable, impenetrable, shallow barrier of thick mud. Donnelly relates this directly to massive volcanic destruction, comparing the oceanic debris to the thick layers of volcanic ash that buried the city of Pompeii. The surviving world was completely cut off, completely isolated by a dark, muddy sea, while the ashes of Atlantis just smoldered beneath the waves. All right, let's start making our way back up. Section 4, Resurfacing. Atlantis in culture today. Ascending back to the present day, let's move to and see how this builds into our modern world. Donnelly actually traces direct lines from Atlantean colonization straight to our traditions today. For instance, he argues that the Roman Saturnalia, which was this huge festival of joy, equality, and gift-giving, was actually just a retained cultural memory of the golden age of Atlantean harvest feasts. And what's the modern descendant of the Roman Saturnalia? The vibrant, wildly celebratory carnivals we still see around the world today. The sources basically claim that we inherited a massive cultural legacy from the scattered survivors of the Cataclysm, who supposedly seeded these concepts globally. Donnelly points to the really uncanny similarities of global flood legends across Hebrew, Chaldean, and Mayan cultures as shared, generational memories of the island sinking. He argues the phonetic alphabet, the very origins of our agriculture, and even religious symbols like the 3-pronged trident you see in the hands of both the Greek god Poseidon and various Hindu gods, all radiate outward from this single sunken epicenter. So the crucial point is captured perfectly in this quote from Ignatius Donnelly. He writes, "Modern civilization is Atlantean. The inventive faculty of the present age is taking up the great delegated work of creation where Atlantis left it. The sources impartially frame our current era not as some brand new dawn for humanity, but simply as a continuation. Mankind is finally just picking up the torch that was snuffed out beneath the Atlantic Ocean thousands of years ago." Which leaves us hovering over the abyss with one final, really stark question. If the source materials are right, if the shadows of a drowned world truly do still shape the very letters we write with, the festivals we celebrate, and the myths we pass down, are we simply the descendants of Atlantis?